So if we can take that and keep our officers here versus what we spend on them, we're losing it on the end. We don't wanna do that.
And to hit on that, if you don't mind me, we're not losing officers that are here for 1 or 2 years. Last week, we lost an officer who's been here for 12 years, okay? 8 more years, he could get a check for the rest of his life, but he figured it was best just to separate. Last year, we lost 2 accident reconstructionists, okay? That is a lot of training, that is a lot of training, that's a lot of investment into them, because they are the ones that go out when there's fatalities, and they have to reconstruct the scene just by what they see on the roadway. And the thing is, one of those guys was also a 12-year veteran. If he would just say 8 more years, that's a check for the rest of his life, and he said, yeah, I can't do that. And the thing is now the Highway Patrol has 2 reconstructionists, and as soon as they graduated from their academy, it's like, we're gonna put you on the reconstruction team. So, we are investing so much money into these folks, and I think what a lot of people don't see is like what Mr. Rivera said, is when you put people in the academy, that's give or take about a 9 to 10 month academy. So the folks who start in February, they won't be out of the academy, they won't be out of field training, by themselves, on the streets till almost about 2019, late 2018. And that's the thing is we invest, people don't see that, how much money's invested to them up front. So they think as these people leave that, we're not losing money, but in fact we are, to where if we just put that adequate benefits package or compensation package, in the long run, we truly are saving that money as compared to training all these people to be 5, 10, 15-year veterans with all these certifications and experience and training, and then they just leave to go to other agencies that provide the proper compensation.
That sounds common sense to me. So I'm sure it does to you folks as well. Next. Now we're talking a little bit about our fire department. And they're facing the same issues as our police department, budget cuts. And that's something that we need to work on for them just as much as we do with the police. Some of the issues that they're concerned about are ones that affect us directly as citizens. A 9th ambulance. Now, that's because one was decommissioned and then has been brought back up again?
Yes, in 2014, Chief Gardner was the chief at the time. God rest his soul, he's passed. But he felt the need, based on our call volume, to add Medic 22 to help combat being out of ambulances and helping provide for the city. When Station 9 opened up in 2017, that ambulance was taken out of service and placed into just our reserve status. It's not stocked, it's not staffed. If an ambulance breaks down, that's what they go into. And that ambulance helped out a lot. When that little overlap, when we had 9 ambulances for about a month, our time to call, our response time was close to the 4-minute average, and since then it's just gotten longer and longer. It's tough for us and it's tough for the citizens.
And that's really, in the end, it's affecting you folks. And I live down the street from them, so I don't want that affecting me either. So proper staffing, so for their trucks, their fire engines, rescue company, their fleet replacement, proper number of supervisors. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I can. So every station has a captain. There are 8 stations in the city. 2 of those stations operate dual company stations, which means there's not just a fire truck there. These stations also have a heavy rescue company as well. And that truck, the heavy rescue truck, has a lot of specialized equipment on there. A lot of training goes involved to being able to use all that stuff. Those guys, however, it's typically a senior firefighter. So I ride it a lot. I'm on our rescue team. Again, I'm a firefighter. If we go on scene and there's another officer there that's making, that's in charge of something, me as the subject matter expert for that technical rescue, if I can make the suggestion, hey sir, this is how I would do it, but in the end, he can say no, yes, okay, or ignore me. Putting an officer on there gets that level of credibility to whoever's on that truck. These guys, I go on calls by myself with just another firefighter, and I'm responsible for $1 million+ of apparatus and equipment, making sure it gets to and from the call, safely. I don't have that rank behind me to make some of those tough calls that another officer would. So a captain on each one of those, or even a lieutenant, you know, a junior officer, would work well in that situation.
Okay, and then more fire stations, and, you know, Councilman Harris had a town hall meeting about the mud, you know, and one of our responsibilities for that are gonna be providing fire and police, is that correct? So if we're having issues now, dealing with what we have now, that's gonna really strain them if we're having to cater to another 3,500 homes.
If,
Those are rooftops.
if,
Okay.
I mean, if I could interject on
Sure,
that,
by all means.
as far as I know, the mud is its own entity, correct? So, just like anything else, Harker Heights, Belton, Fort Hood, we have a mutual aid agreement with them, but in the county, the primary fire response is Southwest Bell County,
Okay,
so that would be their jurisdiction.
okay, so we don't have to worry about that then.
We may run mutual aid in there, but their primary fire response is Southwest Bell County. Now, the city does have a contract in the county for EMS response, because there's no EMS agency out there, but that's an outdated contract. As far as I know, it hasn't been looked at since either the late '90s or early 2000s.
Oh, wow.
And that's something that the city council can do. They can look at that and renegotiate that contract.
Okay,
And same thing with law enforcement, that would be the responsibility
County?
of the
Okay.
Bell County Sheriff's
All right.
Office, that's correct.
all right, so again, you know, it's, that's how we get proper information, very good, okay? So next, and as I had mentioned already, they're not trying to get top dollar, they just wanna be competitively, fairly paid and compensated. And then meeting the industry standards with the equipment and that they need to have to service us. This is not for them, they're nice toys, I'm sure they like to get on and say, look at my nice fire truck or whatever, but in the end, that's to service us, to save our lives, literally. Next. So, all of these issues are very important to the safety and welfare of the people of Killeen and those who provide the services. I think if you have an early opportunity to speak to these gentlemen afterward, I would encourage you to do it, because you can hear, they love what they do, they enjoy what they do, and they look forward to doing the services that they provide to us, that in the end have great consequences, hopefully for the better, in that when they've responded, they've achieved the goal of saving us from whatever we might be experiencing at that time. So every year, the calls keep going up. As the population goes, the calls go up. I mean, that's just common sense. Currently, they average about 50 calls a day. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, and that I don't know if that number, that's from, mid-February, it's mid-March now, the number could be a little bit higher, could be a little bit lower. But 2007, Station 8 went online. That was up until Station 9 opened, that was the newest station, so it's been about a 9-year lag. In 2014, we, like I said, Chief Gardner added another ambulance, but that ambulance was taken back in 2017. So essentially, we're operating with the same amount of ambulances we've been operating with since 2014. Our call volume has gone up about 2.5% annually since 2007. So we're operating with the same number of ambulances that we had in 2014, but our call volume has gone up 2.5% compounded over the last 3.5 years. We're essentially running, we have 17,000 calls last year with the same amount of ambulances we ran in 2014, when we ran, I think it was about 13,500. So that leads to a lot of wear and tear on the vehicles, because even though we have our primary response districts, when that ambulance is out, somebody has to cover that call. Somebody's gotta go, so 22, which was the ambulance that was taken out, was serviced downtown Killeen, north side of Killeen. It's where a ton of our calls were located, was taken out, so that falls on Medic 2 now. They go out, another call comes to that area, so Station 3 from Twin Creek has to now come down to downtown, or Station 5 on Jasper has to come to downtown. So now they're out, it's just a compounding effect, everybody gets drawn somewhere else, so it's extra miles on the engines, it's extra miles, that the citizens are put in danger, because we're going lights and sirens, we're going emergency traffic. We have a certain guideline that we, follow for our emergency response, but that's why they're called accidents, they happen. We do the best we can to make sure that they don't, but that they happen, so we're putting the citizens at a greater risk by having emergency traffic for that long. And like I said, the extra wear and tear on trucks and fuel costs, and the guys, I mean, it's, when you're running 10 to 12 calls a day at an average of about an hour and a half a call, it's a full day. That's eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a gas station. That's the mental stress, the physical stress, and then they've got to deal with that.
Not what we see on TV, when those guys are living a little easier there. So, next slide. So, what does this mean to you and I? This means that our lives are put at risk when these departments don't have necessary equipment and tools required to perform their jobs that save lives. So, we want to make sure that we can do that again help them by doing wrong way. By getting informed, okay? Contact your council person, the mayor, the city manager, and put pressure on them. I mean, a phone call, an email, a letter, they're all accessible. Now, what they do with that information is another story, but they are accessible, I will say that. But when they start getting a lot of something, they're gonna have to respond to it. And as citizens, that's how, again, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, that's how we get our voices heard, by making sure that we reach out and contact them and say, hey, there's a situation here, I wanna know what's going on with it, or why is this not being done? So, does anybody remember this?
Yes,
Mickey.
Mickey's.
Okay, so next. So here's a good question for you. Why was the money that was received for the loss of this fire truck engine not used to replace the one that was lost? Does anybody know what happened to that money, or where it went? Was the vehicle replaced? Next slide. It went to the general fund. Now, I will say this, I've heard this as a common practice. Why, I don't know. But to me, I don't feel that it's the right practice. You had something insured. It's a vital part of your community public safety. Okay? And then that money was not used to buy a new one, and it was put into the general fund. Probably to help that $8 million that we have problems with that nobody knows nothing about.
To the format, can you explain the difference in that insurance issue with that?
As far as, like, what happened to the money? Sure, so, from what I understand, so, we lost the truck in that fire, saved 3 people though, so I think that outweighs that cost, I'm gonna throw that out there. The insurance company came back, they didn't have, because the truck was, about a year old, it's depreciated in value, but they didn't have, like, the full coverage on it.
That was underinsured, correct?
Yeah, well, I think that the vehicle was insured, but the cost of the tools that we lost as well, that wasn't
Yeah.
insured. That money, the check was cut for, I believe, I wanna say it was 700 and some odd thousand, don't quote me on the number, it was 700,000, it was more than 700, less than 800,000, if I remember the number right. That money went to the city, and at the time, interim city manager Dennis Baldwin used that money to help balance the budget and make up for some shortcomings.
Okay.
That's,
So I don't need to elaborate on that. That pretty well speaks for itself.
Yeah, and to hit on that, same thing with the police department. As far as I can recall, I'm not aware of any time or circumstances when, our vehicles get lost too, whether they get hit by drunk drivers or just officers get into accidents and things happen, like what Mark said, it's just the nature of the beast. We have to accept that. But we don't get those cars replaced, one-on-one when we totally lose a vehicle and it's completely totaled out. And we just have to wait to see whether, cars are allotted for the next budget year or whatever, and that's all we typically receive.
All right, so next. Now, we all know that governing may be difficult and cumbersome at times, but being responsible should be neither anytime. And that's something, that's a model that I try and live by, and it's something that I'll also govern by. So now we'll talk about ethics when we get into that. So, definition of ethics. And this is from Merriam-Webster. So, a discipline dealing with what is good and bad, and with moral duty and obligation, and a couple of others. So, I would ask, are we holding our council and our mayor and our city manager to the same standard? You know, it's something that we have to live by. Why can't we make those who we put in office live by the same standards that we live by? And it can't be all about a bunch of promises. Of course, that's the whole political two-step, double talk, whatever we want to call it. But at this level, we have a little bit more control than we do over senators and congressmen, of course, presidents, so on and so forth. So it goes back to making our voices heard and then getting out and doing something about it. So can our council members vote one way to benefit themselves and another when it's on the same issue and brought by another who's not in their circle or faction? And what I mean by that is I've heard and seen where you've got a council member who's voting something for their district that might benefit them, and it's something that's good, and another council member wants to put something that's up for the whole city, but that gets shot down because it's not favorable to that person because I don't know why, but that's what I've heard and seen. To me, if we're doing something and people are putting agendas, if you want to use that word, that are meant to benefit us as a city, everybody should be pretty much in lockstep with that. We can't be dividing ourselves to a point where every issue has to be divisive when it's supposed to be benefiting our city and the citizens that live in it. So these are the questions that are being raised because one, ethics has a profound effect on the budget because of how you think